Kings fans, welcome to another edition of our Legends series as we look at the players and individuals that have helped shape Kings hockey over the years. I know what you're saying. Why is Nick wearing the original Kings jersey, the Forum blue and gold, as Mr. Cook would say? It's because we go back to the early days of Kings hockey, and this is a real treat for me, and I'm sure it's a treat for longtime Kings fans who remember buying the student tickets for $1.50, and then after the first period sitting on the glass and watching periods 2 and 3 down there. Can't do that anymore. The good old days, right? We welcome in Butch Goring, Don Kozak, and Terry Harper, who were teammates for 3 seasons with the Kings beginning in 1972. We'll go around the horn here as we usually do. You can kind of fill us in, guys, on what you've been doing, what you're up to. We'll start with Butch Goring. Butch was drafted by the Kings, hard to believe, 51 years ago, 1969.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Really good. Thank you.
Butch, I know for someone like myself in broadcasting, I know you've been with the New York Islanders as a broadcaster for a number of years, but just kind of give us a feel for, since you retired as a player, and you've been in hockey for now over 50 years, on different levels, what you've been doing since you retired.
Well, you're right. I've been very fortunate to be able to stay in the business, and I went right from being a player, and my last year was with the Boston Bruins in '85, and I went right into coaching the Bruins in '85, '86, and really for the next 20, 25 years, I bounced around coaching at different levels, the National Hockey League, the International Hockey League, junior hockey, and even went over to Europe and to Germany and coached there. So I've been very fortunate to be able to stay in the game and test my knowledge and test my skills as a coach, because it's way different when you can't control the game. As we all know, as a player, you can have some input. As a coach, it's a whole different ball game. It's about managing people. So for that much, for the 25 years, it was a fun time. And then I was, again, lucky enough to be able to get into broadcasting with MSG Network and get involved with the Islander broadcasts. And, being an Islander alumni and having some success there, it just moved right into there. And I have to tell you, it was a lot more difficult to be a broadcaster than a coach than a player. It's a whole different ball game when you're just speaking to who knows how many people, and there's no retakes, and so you really got to be on your toes. You got to be sharp. So it was a good challenge, but I've really enjoyed it. It's allowed me to stay with the game and be around young people.
And again, Butch, congratulations, over 50 years in pro hockey. Don Kozak, drafted by the Kings in 1972, a second-round pick, and played 6 years in LA. Then you wrapped up your NHL career in Vancouver. Tell us where you've been since you retired as a player some 35, 40 years ago.
Well, when I got out of hockey, I figured, what am I going to do? So I took a couple of years off when I retired, down to Dana Point, so running on the beach, lifting weights every day, but that got old. So one of my friends got me in the car business, and I said, heck, I don't know anything about cars. I've never even, can't even fix a flat tire, So he said, come on, you'll have some fun. You can make some money. So make a long story short, I got into business and worked my way up into management. And then I was a manager for 30 years, and I just retired about a year ago. So it was a great career. And, I was just blessed to have that in hockey as my career.
So you're still in Southern California?
Right. Yes, in Laguna Hills, and I have a beautiful wife and 2 kids, and my kid just got his master's degree from Notre Dame in business, so he works in a big company in Chicago. My daughter works in Beverly Hills, and she lives in Beverly Hills, so she works for a wealth management organization. So how's it been?
That's great. Terry Harper, I mentioned before this interview began that I chatted with Hall of Fame broadcaster Bob Miller, who's been retired for a few years now. He told me that he met you recently in Santa Barbara. I think you guys had lunch. You've been in California for a number of years. since you retired as a player. And by the way, a very successful career, 5 Stanley Cups, 5 with Montreal before you joined the Kings in 1972. But after you retired, after 1,000 NHL games, what's been keeping you busy over the years?
I've moved around quite a bit still. But my biggest disappointment in hockey ever was that we didn't win the Stanley Cup in LA. We were so close, and I thought if they'd have kept that team together another year, that we had a really good chance of winning a cup there. I thought that the year my last year there, we almost got there, but we just probably didn't have enough experience amongst the team in playoff hockey, and so I thought, well, another year. But one morning I woke up, I was driving on the freeway and learned I was now in Detroit. So, and I spent 5 years in Detroit. And going back east, I realized that I never wanted to live back east again. So I made a deal to go to Colorado with the Rocky Hockey to get me moved out of Detroit back out west, and stayed in Colorado for about 5 years. Actually, when I moved to Colorado, I threw away all my hockey equipment. And was never going to play again, I didn't think. And then when I was in Colorado, the U.S. national team asked if I'd come down. That's where they trained, and if I'd come down there for their camp. So I bought a pair of skates and went there, skated a couple for 2 weeks with them. Had a great time, enjoyed that. But then never thought I'd play hockey again after that. But from my experience of friends that I met when we were down in Southern California in LA, we had several friends who were from Northern California, and they lived near us and became our friends down there. And we used to always ask, they said they worked where they commuted an hour and a half to work to and each way every day. And I said, what in hell do you want to live like that for? And they said, well, so we make enough money to move back to Northern California. And so when my wife and I were looking for somewhere to live, we went and looked around in Northern California. We arrived and really liked it. Originally, we were going to stay in the Bay Area. And then one day we drove over to Sacramento, and it looked exactly like most people in California won't know, but it looked like the town we grew up in, Regina and Saskatoon and Winnipeg. Plains towns, agricultural towns, no big buildings, canopy of trees, and just see a couple of buildings. And we thought, oh, my wife said, this looks like a good bohunk town. I said, well, let's move here. So we did, and been here since 1985.
And I understand, tell me if this is true or not, Terry, are you still playing?
Oh yeah, every Sunday, for sure. I was playing twice a week, but I was under the concussion protocol for 6 months there, and I got away from playing twice a week. And when I went back, I couldn't keep up, so I went just to once a week on Sunday.
Well, that's great, and I want to let everybody know, and it's a testament to your longevity. You're 80 years old now and still playing the game that you've been playing since you were, well, old enough to walk. That's great. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's a testament to the guys I play with now, because they put up with an 80-year-old and don't run over him.
The thing is, Nick, is he hasn't lost a step. He's still at the same speed as when he played with us.
Well, speed didn't count to me.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that all 3 of you were teammates for 3 years, 72 to 75. And in 72, 73, Don, your rookie year, Terry, you were just acquired from Montreal, and Butch, that was your 4th year in the organization. You're still a kid at, what, 23, 22? Bob Pulford had played for the Kings, finished out his career with the Kings, and then became the coach. And it just seemed like things started to turn around. And Butch, you can address this first, because you were with Pulley as a player, and now he's coaching. And the first year Pulley coached the team, you guys improved quite a bit from the previous year. So let's talk about those teams where you three were teammates with Bob Pulford as your coach. Butch, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Pulley really came in and installed a very defensive-minded system. I mean, he was, I like to kid all the people who used to play with the Toronto Maple Leaf organization, and Terry Harper will be able to attest to this. They were they were a hook 'em, they were a hold 'em, a very, very tight defensive checking team, and very hard to play against. And our coaches before Pulley took over were certainly a lot more loose and not as demanding with the defensive part of the game. And at times it would used to frustrate us, honestly, because we wanted to see a little more open thoughts from Pulley, but he was a stubborn individual. But there's no doubt about it. He made us a much, much better hockey team. Our goaltender certainly appreciated. As Terry said, we had a pretty good base there. We had 6 guys that could play a pretty solid game of defense, and the forwards were all in tune. You know, we were looking for someone to sort of point us in the right direction, and we had some young talent, Mike Murphy and Tommy Williams, that come in from New York, along with Gene Carr, and so it was a pretty good team. And so Pulley did, in my opinion, did a marvelous job of being able to get us to think about both ends of the rink, and he made believers of us, because even though maybe we didn't score as many goals as maybe we did the year before, we had more success.
And Don, what was the transition like for you? Your first year in the NHL, and you're playing for a no-nonsense, defensive-minded head coach in Bob Pulford. Did that kind of suit you at that time?
Well, really it did, because in juniors, when I played for the Oil Kings, we went to the Memorial Cup, last 2 years, the Junior Championship of Canada, and we played a wide open, run and gun offense. And at times I don't even think I back checked in juniors, so it was a real shock when I went to the Kings with Pulley, because, I scored 60 goals my last year, 55 the year before with the Oil Kings. And like I say, I was offensive minded, and I was a good penalty killer in juniors. I had the record for the most shorthanded goals until it was broken a little while ago. But when I got up with Pulley, it was, God, what am I going to do here? I mean, I got to learn how to play defense. I got to start all over. And but it suited our team, because, we didn't, Butchie was one of our stars on offense. And, we were all, average players. We didn't have really any superstars up front. So it suited our style with what we had to work with. And we had a strong defense with Terry leading it, and we had Rogie and Go. So what we had, we made the best of it. And I think the 1 year we had the 105 points, which I think it still stands for record for the Kings for the most.
It does.
So, the style suited our team, and that's what made us successful. But myself, it was hard, for the first year to learn, to be defensive minded. Pick up your wingers and back check, and, be a lot stronger in your own end instead of cheating and trying to go for the breakaway. So it was a shock.
Yeah. And Terry, you were acquired, I think in August of '72 from Montreal. And I'm sure Bob Pulford had something to do with that. And you and Pulley have some history. We'll talk about that in a while. But want to talk about, number one, your reaction when you got traded from a team where you did win 5 Stanley Cups, Montreal, 5 in 10 years, and now you're coming out west. Had you ever been to Los Angeles before you got traded? And what was your reaction when you found out you were going to become part of this team coached by a guy you played against for many years in Bob Pulford?
Actually, that's the reason I went there, was Bob Pulford. At that time, that was the year the World Hockey League was starting, and I already decided I wanted to leave Montreal, and was going to go play with Quebec in the World Hockey League, along with J.C. Tremblay and John Ferguson, and Sam Pollock, who I'd played for in the pros in Montreal, but I'd also played for in Ottawa. I had a pretty good relationship with him, and he said to me, well, we can't afford to pay you what they're going to pay you there, but we'd like to keep you in the NHL. I can find a deal for you in the NHL. Will you stay with us, stay with the NHL? But I was a little naive. I didn't realize that he was doing it for his own benefit more than anything. But he said, so he called me and he says, I want you to go out and talk to LA. And I said, a real hockey team. I would stay in the NHL. I said, I'll go talk to them because I told you I would. But when I get back, I want you to find one of the original 6 teams, or I'm going to go to Quebec City. So I went out to LA, and Bob Pulford is the reason I went there. Decided to go there. I spent a couple of days talking with him and knowing him for how he emphasized, strong. Well, Toronto did, the old league. It was very tight defensive hockey, and the average games, usually the games were only 3 or 4 goals total. And so Pulford, that's the kind of coach he was said he was going to be, and I really believed in that. So when I went back to Montreal, I said to Sam Pollock, well, I appreciate what you did, but he said, well, I got you a deal in Boston. I said, well, Boston is one of my favorite towns. I love it, but I didn't like their coach. I didn't like Sinda as a coach. And I thought, well, Pulford knows how to operate in this league and how you can be successful when you don't have all the big stars. And so I chose to go there, and wasn't disappointed at all. I mean, it was a great experience for myself, my family, and Butch and Don, all these guys. They had some great players. They just hadn't had a team, and being one of the new teams at that time, you weren't going to outscore some of the old teams because they had too many good players. So you had to play a game like Pulford was thinking about it, a nice tight game, get your wins with 3-2 scores and 2-1, be happy with those kind. You don't need 7 or 8 goals every night to be successful in this league. So
that's not what Cozy was thinking, Terry. I can tell you that. Cozy wasn't thinking 2-3 goals. He wanted 6 or 7.
He wanted that himself, I know.
Yeah, he wasn't buying into that concept.
Harper's exaggerating his story. He's exaggerating his story a little because you know what? When he got there, he got himself a house right on the beach. He didn't care about hockey. He was running every day on the beach with his Great Danes, and he wouldn't have that in Montreal. He'd be in 10 feet of snow. So that's the real reason he came to LA.
I'll tell you why the house on the beach, Don, was I went away on one of our famous road trips that went on for a week or 2 weeks at a time. Came back, my wife says, I bought us a house down on the beach. She says it's a fixer-upper for $100,000. I said, what? So, wow. Probably the best buy I ever made in my life. Yes.
Sure.
But she did it all while I was away.
You guys mentioned how close, I think Terry did a few moments ago, how close you were in 74, 75. And you're right. That still is a franchise record for points in a season by a Kings team, 105. The makeup of that team, what made it so successful? And do you all agree that you were just getting that close? I know Bob Pulford years ago told me after that season, he went into Mr. Cook's office and said, Mr. Cook, I think I can get Dave Keon to come to play in LA, and I think he'd put us over the top. Of course, Mr. Cook had other ideas. They wind up trading for Marcel Dion, which Terry Harper was part of the deal with Detroit. But that 74-75 team, what stood out to you guys, making it such a solid team? I'll start with you, Don.
Well, bottom line is it was the goals against. I think we had one of the best goals against in the league. And, they say offense wins games, but defense won games for us. You there?
We're here.
Oh, okay. So that was, like you say, we all worked together. It was a team effort. There was, not one guy. Every guy would contribute every night. But I believe we lost to Toronto in the first round. That's when they had the 2 out of 3. The summer was just terrible. But if we'd have beat Toronto, then we'd have played, I believe, with Pittsburgh the next round. And, you know, there's no guarantees, but I know we'd beat Pittsburgh, and then we're on to the semifinals, and who knows what happened then. So, you know, the cards were stacked in our favor, but unfortunately, 2 out of 3 series, best team doesn't always win, and that's what happened to us. And I think they beat us 2-1. Both games went into overtime, I believe. So the last game was 2-1. So it was a heartbreaking series, but you know, we, like you say, we just played that defensive style, and we just had to put, you know, Butch would have put more pucks in the net, then we'd have been okay.
That team, I did a little research. You almost every regular played every night. I know, Butch, that year you missed 20 games, but you had 10 players that played every game, all 80. You had 6 or 7 other players that played 74 plus games. So, Butch, I mean, we all know how injuries can play a part in a team's success or not reaching their potential. That had to have been huge for that team in 74, 75.
Yeah, there's no doubt that you know, that team was pretty solid, and you're right. I mean, you know, I missed 20 games and was right near the end of the season. That's when I took a skate right just below the eye, and I came back and with no excuses, of course, because I couldn't get hurt anymore. But I wasn't completely healed, and I was seeing 3 pucks most of the time, so it made it very very difficult. But the other thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, at that time, you know, Bob Pulley wanted to finish, in my mind, and he wanted to finish ahead of Montreal. And so he went to the whip, you know, right pretty much till the end of the season. And we end up finishing second behind the Canadians, albeit we had 105 points. But I think that, in my own mind, I think that might have been a bit of a mistake. I think if we had just settled for second and we'd been a little more rested, perhaps just a little bit more energy. And the other thing is, you know, my left winger, Dan Maloney, he lost his dad just as our playoffs started. So he didn't get a lot of rest. And then, of course, Bob Nevin, my right winger, he was 35, 36, and he had been playing a ton. And he didn't have a lot of energy left. So there were some things that went on with that team at that time that ultimately, I believe, cost us the series. And no one wanted to play us in the playoffs because we were so stingy. We were so good defensively. And we were solid. Like, we had solid 6 defensemen. I mean, I remember Murdoch was playing along with Shelley Kannegeezer, and then there was Dave Hutchison along with Neil Komodowski. And then Harp had Larry Brown, his partner. And I mean, there was just no weak links there. No matter who we threw out there, we were a pretty solid team. And of course, Rogie played exceptionally well for us. So we felt confident. And I was always upset with them moving Terry Harper and Dan Maloney. They were a big part of our team. They were a big part of the physical presence with our team. And not that Marcel Dion wasn't a great hockey player, but it changed the chemistry. And sometimes people forget that chemistry is a very important factor in any trades that you make. So that was a really, really good team. But once the trade was made, we became a different team.
And Terry, for you, that was your 3rd year with the Kings, and you were the captain all 3 years in LA. From the standpoint of being a captain, how did you handle that role? What did you feel were your responsibilities wearing the C for those Kings teams the 3 years you were in LA?
Well, being a cab captain and trying to get my money back from Pulford for running the cab. You know, as a captain, I don't think I had much to do. All I did was play my game that I could play, do the best I could, and as you know, with Butch and Don, we just had a good bunch of characters, a whole good bunch of characters who all could play a role. And that's what Pulford did. He put us into the role he wanted us to play, and that's my reason for thinking we were successful. And when I got traded out of LA, I had just signed what I thought was a no trade contract, and before I got home, I heard on the radio I was traded to Detroit. So I think that took the wind out of Pulford a lot, because he never thought that he'd have Dion coming, but having Dion coming, that changed that whole chemistry that he was building for a team. As a team, he didn't want a team that was led by one guy. He wanted a team that no matter who he put out, next line, next set of defense, next goaltender, all would do about the same. You know, play his style of hockey that he had played in Toronto. This was clutch and grab, hold, and whatever it takes to win.
All three of you are part of either Kings history or NHL history or part of something that we haven't seen very often or since it happened. And I want to talk about that. Start with you, Don. You have the NHL record for the fastest goal to start a playoff game. 6 seconds. It was a 1977 Game 4 against the Boston Bruins. So your name is in the record book, not only the Kings, but the NHL. Can you relive that play? You go out there, the puck is about ready to drop. What happens in those next 6 seconds?
Well, we were down, I believe, 3-0 in that series. So, you know, I mean, our backs were against the wall. Everybody says we were out. Bottom line, we came back, and I think we forced the 7th game. But, you know, the puck was dropped, and, you know, it went back to Brad Park, and he slid it over to Milbury. And I just, you know, scooted in and intercept the puck and just went in and Deke Cheevers and scored. So I didn't even know at the time, you know, 6 seconds. I didn't tell really after the game when I was told that it was a record. I was, you know, yeah, I was a little excited because, you know, 6 seconds in the game and you score the goal to, you know, start the team off, and hopefully you can build some momentum from there. So it was exciting after when I realized, you know, and it still stands. So I watch every game in the playoffs for 6 seconds, see if anything happens.
The record is still yours, like the Dolphins do every year when the last NFL team loses a game. Their record still is intact. Butch, we've talked about this over the years, but in the 76 playoffs with Boston, you score in overtime to tie the series, force a Game 7, and something that Kings fans had never seen before. And I don't think, I can't remember seeing it in the NHL, at least. You did not have to skate off the ice after you scored that goal, did you?
No, I didn't. And, you know, obviously it was a very exciting moment playing against the Bruins and winning in Game 6 in overtime, and to score that goal. And everybody, you know, that series there, the fans got so much into it. I mean, there was standing ovations in the warm-up, I mean, for 10, 15 minutes. And it really had been the first time that there was so much fan participation in, you know, in the hockey sport, as long as I can remember. And there's still, I've never seen anything like it. So everybody was kind of, you know, really electrified almost to, you know, for us to win the game and to win it like we did. And then just the emotions just kind of just boiled right over. And, you know, we were all in the corner. I mean, I've seen the film 1,000 times. It's one I never get tired of watching for obvious reasons. But, you know, and it was all about spontaneity. I mean, I just threw my gloves up in the air. I was so excited at scoring the goal and knowing we're going to a Game 7. And then all of a sudden, everybody's over there. They're mobbing one another. And before I know it, Mike Corrigan and Dave Hutchison have hoisted me up on their shoulders, and we're going off the ice. And it was just a really special moment, you know, and one that certainly there's no way I can ever forget it.
Yeah, it might be the first and only time in NHL history that a guy's been carried off the ice on someone else's shoulders. Terry,
Can I say something? I think before the national anthem, we had like a 5 or 6 minute standing ovation where they couldn't even, you know, start the national anthem. I mean, it was unbelievable, the electricity in the crowd. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
and Terry, Bob Pulford, you came to play in LA partly because of Bob Pulford being the coach, but you and he have some history in determining the rules of the game. And I remember as a kid growing up in Rochester, New York, the Rochester Americans had great teams. And whenever two players got whistled off for fighting, they went to the same penalty box. And that was the way it was at every level. But in 1963, you and Bob Pulford fought against each other, wound up in the same penalty box, and decided, let's keep fighting, which changed the rule. We've got to have 2 penalty boxes, one for each team. Can you kind of, you don't have to go on forever about it, but how did that all come about? Why were the emotions so high that you guys felt that it had to carry over even though you were sent off the ice?
I don't remember why. I assumed it was probably the referee or the linesman kept us apart on the ice. Once we got in there was nobody to keep us apart.
Okay.
And, you think back to those days, it wasn't just when there was only 2 in there. I've been in there when there was 6 players in there. Then you couldn't even sit down, and you're all in that same little box. And usually there was a retired gentleman as the doorkeeper. And the poor guy, he should have got hazard pay. For every game they were there, but quite often it was, some old retired person had got that job as the penalty box, and at least 6, maybe even 8 I've seen in there at times when you've had a brawl on the ice, and it all had to stand up, couldn't even sit down. But I don't really remember what set that off, other than Toronto and Montreal. We were very competitive against each other. The fans probably got involved because they were over the top, swinging at me at one time when I saw the films later. So I don't know what.
Who won the fight?
Harper.
Harp, did you win the fight?
I never won one yet.
Hey, he's honest.
That way, nobody expected me to win. I could just go and fight.
Yeah. And of course,
Harp was so famous. He would, in front of the net, I remember he would, just give it to the guys, but he'd give you that smile and smirk, and the other guys would just go crazy. I remember one night in Chicago, he even gave it to Dan Maloney. He said, "Oh no, what's going to happen here?" But he always famous for his little smirk and smile, and they would used to get them. Oh, they would go crazy.
Well, when I was in Detroit, they got even with me one time. I was rooming alone because I guess there was an odd number of guys on the team. So usually, as you know, there was 2 to a room. And I was by myself. And late at night, this knock comes on the door, and I go open the door, and it's Dennis Hextall. And my history with Dennis Hextall is I don't ever remember playing Minnesota when we weren't involved in a fight, because every time I gave him a little smirk, he'd go crazy. And so I open the door, and here's Dennis Hextall. He says, "I'm your new roommate." I couldn't. What a shock. Anyway, it was all good. As it turned out, he and I became very close friends, and actually did a couple of business things together after hockey. But at the time, I'd never spoken a word to him other than fight with him. And here he was saying, "Well, I'm your new roommate."
Yeah, that's great. Great. We'll go around one more time. And again, I want to thank all 3 of you for your time today. This has been great, looking back into the early days of Kings hockey. What do you like about the game today? The game has changed, no question about it. It's been over 50 years since you guys started playing amateur pro hockey. Don, I'm sure you watch some hockey. I don't know how much. What do you like about the way the game is going right now?
Well, this isn't the way it's going right now. I like their paychecks, which we didn't have. But, naturally, Butchie probably, he's seen more hockey than both me and Terry put together right now. But, naturally, the game's faster. They're bigger, stronger. But, I don't know. I just like the old style hockey we used to play. There was none of that hitting from behind where, your guy goes flying in the boards where you're going to hurt somebody. We never did that when we played. There's a little more respect when we played as opposed to now. Back then you just drop the gloves and go at it, or, there's no hitting from behind. The game is faster, and I guess, that's a joy to watch because of the speed.
And Butch, of course, you get to watch at least 80 games every year. You're covering the Islanders on a regular basis. what have you seen? What stands out in today's game for you?
Well, you know, it's I mean, obviously the biggest thing is when you don't have the red line, the game is played at a much faster pace than it did. You know, Terry Harper probably wouldn't be able to play today because he couldn't hook or hold anybody, so he'd be out of a job. But I really like you know, the game is getting back actually to what we did in the 60s, 70s, not to the same extreme. But, you know, with Barry Trotz coaching on the Islanders, I mean, he preaches defensive hockey, and we've seen the success that the Islanders have had since Barry has taken over. So even with a lot of the individual talent that's out there and certainly the speed they play, at the end of the day, and Lou Lamoriello says this all the time, that, you know, great players can win hockey games, but defensive teams can win championships. And so I see a lot of the NHL style of play going back to a lot of the things that us guys, you know, grew up with in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s. So I like the way it's trending now. I think there's a better combination of hockey that we used to, as opposed to just a run and gun that we saw for a number of years.
And Terry, everybody has said you're the stay-at-home, steady Eddie defenseman. Is there a place for a guy like you in today's game? And what do you think, like what you see when you watch a game?
Well, I still think there's a lot of space for guys that like play the way I did with the stay-at-home. We can be paired with somebody who's very offensive-minded, and make that as a pair. You can work out. It could work out really well. The best thing I like about the new rules is the icing rule. I could have played many more years with that icing rule. They used to just throw it in your corner and then all run at you, smash it. But now, when they blow the whistle, as soon as it goes across, the defenseman's got a lot longer lifetime.
I'll tell you what, Nick, before you wrap up, Nick, I want to just in going with Terry's style of play, which used to make me laugh. Terry used to play against Phil Esposito a lot. And we know Phil used to hang around the crease area a lot. And I'll never forget one game that Terry used to hold on to the other person's stick all the time. It was an old trick from way back when, and you never got called. And I remember one time Phil was in front of the net and he was yelling at the refs. And of course, Terry had his stick, and Phil just let his stick go and he skated away, and he looked at the ref and he said, "Do you think he's holding my stick?" And Terry Harper, yeah, he had his stick right in his hand, and Phil Esposito was so frustrated. But that was the way the game was played in the you know, way back when. And
what he didn't tell you was I offered him my stick. I tried to get him to take mine.
Well, other than you're a righty.
My big blade. Yeah, he could never have scored. The straight big blade.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I've liked, and that's going back in time with all three of you. And I'm sure Kings fans are going to enjoy when they watch this. Thank you, Don Kozak. Thank you, Butch Goring. Thank you, Terry Harper. And thank all three of you for being such a big part of Kings hockey and helping building it to where it is today. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good seeing you guys.
Good seeing you.
Nice seeing you.
Take care.
Kings fans, we will talk to you next time. We've done a number of these Kings Legends chats. They're a lot of fun, so look for them and stay well. We hope to see you soon at Staples Center. So long, everybody.